show us or go through the different strategies or framework that you would apply for yourself or also for a client, that the viewers are kind of understand what actions maybe that they're already doing correctly or not. So maybe kind of go through that step-by-step strategy with us if you'd like.
Yeah, from a high level, because there's 100, I think when we launch a new campaign, our CRM kicks out. Last time I looked, it was 208 tasks.
Okay.
So we're not
So
going
let's
to
do it
go
on
through
the high level.
208 tasks. So the way I like to explain it is you can condense SEO into two categories.
Yeah.
So category number one is what you do on your website. Category number two is what you do externally to your website.
Yeah.
Now, most of the gains, which will be surprising to hear for people that are not as familiar with SEO, come from what you do externally to your website, the credibility. But that is only going to be effective as your website is solid. So when we launch a new account, we start a couple things parallel. So the first thing is our developers go in and try to improve the page load, the speed, the mobile friendliness. You don't necessarily have to change the design and the branding. You just see if you can make it load more effectively.
Right.
While that's going on, because that's going to take 2, 3, 4 weeks, depending on how big the website is, then we also have kind of our analysis side of the team that goes in. So one of my guys just absolutely loves data, which is amazing because I don't want to get into the stuff that he gets into. And so he digs in and just looks at all the nitty gritty stuff, and then including content. So when he comes back and says, hey, not only here are some keywords we feel like you can monetize, because you don't want to just show up on the front of Google just for bragging rights of an obscure word. You want to show up on page one of Google for a word that you can monetize. So you want to look at what those words are, and then you want to look at your competition and say, okay, what are they doing good? What are they doing bad? What are the opportunities I can capitalize on a little bit quicker? What are the big wins that are going to take longer? So you have to set those realistic expectations. After you figure out what your keyword targets are, then you have to figure out a content strategy to support those keywords. We've all seen those SEO websites that just have a bunch of SEO garbage and repetitive words and gibberish. You don't want to do that. So what you want to do is create unique value-added content, and largely content that attracts the ideal buyer. So how do you solve the problems that these people that are looking for on search engines? How do you come up with solutions? How do you correct their pain points? Whatever it is, depending on your service or retail product, you have to figure out how to tap into that mindset and then create content around that to attract them into the door. Now, after that, it's largely a recurring process of content creation, distribution. And part of that is part of why you want to write really unique content is because you want to attract that external credibility. You want people to share your content. You want people to link to it. And the more external buzz and chatter and what's called citations, references to your website, then those are all like votes in the search engine popularity contest. And the more of those votes you get from qualified quality websites, that external credibility is also going to increase the visibility of your website.
So when you say value content, are you speaking only like what I think about first, and probably most of the viewers are thinking about like blog? Is that like the only way or best way to then create value content, or what is your preferred way or different ways that quality content would be published on a website?
So we usually start with blogs. My team starts with blogs because it's text-based. And so search engines, you can only rank for what search engines can read. And that's not to say that videos and graphics don't have value, and I can talk about that in a minute. But we usually start with text because that's the easiest for search engines to read and understand. So we can get into some tools to use here in a bit. But once you figure out what you're going to write about, then you can repurpose it. So the process that we go through is we write the unique content, and because we spend all this time doing good research, writing a unique piece of content, then we don't have to reinvent the wheel when we then turn it into some sort of video. We can use the blog text or the general outline of it as a narration script for the video. So then we have a video, or we can even repurpose it. If we do a statistical article, then statistics easily convert into infographics. So then you have text, videos, and images, and what you can do from there is stack the content. So you can have your blog post, which has the text first, because text loads quicker than videos and graphics. You want the page to load. Then Google can also read it. Then after that, you can stack the videos and the graphics. And then Google's going to say, well, hey, Daniel's website not only has this unique article, but it's way more diversified with rich media and different types of content than his competitors. So if you front load your efforts to really put your attention towards writing something unique, then it will pay off because you can repurpose it in other ways a lot quicker that still has value.
Okay. Very good. So, so writing great content. Do you have like, a rule of thumb how long that content has to be, or is it, or like how long somebody should be on that page, or what are the metrics that you kind of look at, or you look at the competition first and just be better or long or whatever? It's like what are the like the quality metrics, KPIs that you look for, how you measure value?
So I actually am going to give a surprising answer is I don't. So what I tell my team is to focus on answering the question. So depending on what the topic is we're addressing, sometimes you can do that sufficiently in 300 words. Sometimes it takes 3,000 words. So the problem you run into when you focus on a word count is that, let's say the magic number in your eyes is 1,000 words.
Okay.
But you answer the question perfectly in 300. So now you're going to write 700 words of crap.
Right.
That's going to dilute the value of the article. So I focus on answering whatever the topic at hand is. Now, there are different metrics that you can use. Some people like to use what's called keyword density, which is basically if you have, for easy math, you have 100 words in your article and you say your target keyword one time, you have a 1% density.
Okay.
So if you say it 2 times in 100 words, you have a 2% density. The magic number that SEOs used to throw around like 5-10 years ago was 3 to 6% keyword density. Another tool that's another metric that I find kind of interesting is sometimes we look at is called TF-IDF. It stands for term frequency, inverse document frequency. So basically what that means, term frequency means keywords. How many times are we saying it? Inverse document frequency is what's reverse engineer what the competition is doing. So it's somewhat related to keyword density, but basically what it does is it goes and scans Google and says, okay, what 10 websites are ranking for keyword X, Y, and Z.
Mm-hmm.
Now let's look at what page. It doesn't necessarily mean their homepage. It could be a subpage. What's the literal page that's ranking well? How many words are on the whole page? And out of those words, how many times does it say the keyword? And is a keyword in the title tag? Is it the meta description? Is it an image alts and all these things? And then it gives you averages of those 10. So it says, out of the top 10 pages, the one with the lowest word count is this, and the one with the highest word count is this. And then out of all those 10s, here's the average.
Right.
So what you can kind of imply from that data is, okay, I don't necessarily need to exceed the highest count because, as we said, you're going to dilute and start writing garbage content. But maybe it's reasonable to try and aim for at least the average of the 10.
Mm-hmm.
So TF-IDF is relatively popular to some SEOs, but for us, we focus on just answering the question at hand as best as possible.
Right. Okay. And so now someone would say, okay, I will start writing value content, answering the right questions for the right keywords. And then you mentioned it is important to have others reference back to my article, my blog article, that Google will see that it is relevant, and others are also kind of linking to it. So do I just go over to Entrepreneur Magazine like, hey, here's my article, you want to link it up? So what? Probably not. So what would be like the smart way to start having people link to my articles, or have that to apply that strategy?
So it's going to depend on your industry, and maybe we start with what not to do. So one thing not
like
to
what
do
I just
is,
said.
like don't go to Fiverr. Fiverr has its value for other things, but not for backlinks because the logistics behind.
I saw that. Yeah, like $5 and I'll whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'll give you
So like.
backlinks.
Anybody that can drive good backlinks can't do it for $5.
Right.
So yes, they're a backlink, but they're not quality. And so in 2012, Google came out with an algorithm update called Penguin that targeted low quality backlinks. So back then it was kind of like the wild, wild west, the more the merrier, it didn't really matter the quality. And then they realized that was being abused. So they came out with this algorithm that would penalize low quality backlinks. Now what qualifies as low quality backlinks is backlinks from irrelevant websites, spammy content websites, malicious websites, and also what are called link directories, which are basically just lists of links. And nobody actually uses those directories as an actual consumer because that's what search engines are for. They go to search engines to look for stuff. So don't do link directories, don't do Fiverr, don't do what's called social bookmarks, which is not social media. It's very similar to the directories where it's just a list of links, but like before Facebook came along and you can now share links on social media. Before you used to digitally bookmark them on a social bookmark site. Dig was one of the popular ones. And so you'd create a profile, bookmark your website, and then you could share that bookmark with your friends. And so a lot of SEOs will still automate old style backlinks like that because they can automate them, and then they can just go, look, we got you a bunch of backlinks, but the quality sucks. So
Yeah.
you want to focus on quality more than quantity. One good backlink can be worth more than 1,000 low quality
Okay.
backlinks.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So now what you can do is, depending on what your industry is or your product or service, let's say you have a retail product, then maybe you can partner up with, maybe you can reach out to your manufacturers, your distributors, whatever, and say, hey, can you write a little case study or a review
Mhm.
or something about our product, and look for those link opportunities from existing relationships. Another popular way is what's called outreach, where you go and engage influencers, and there's like different tools, like BuzzStream is a popular one. Ninja Outreach is another one. Pitchbox is another one. So what you do is you
And
say,
those
you
will
go
help
on
me
a,
find the right other pages to go to ask, right?
yeah, so you put in a word or a phrase, and it goes, okay, here's the websites we found that talk about this thing.
Right.
Here are some metrics
Perfect.
to look at and pre-qualify the website. And then it actually has an engagement tool built into it where it'll try and find the contact information. And so
Oh,
then you can
okay.
fire off an email that says, hey, whatever, trying to establish a relationship. Some people just go straight for the ask and say, hey, you have this page here, and my link would go, great, can you do it? But it's just like going to LinkedIn and spamming everybody in your direct messages. If you're spamming everybody for a link, most of them are going to get ignored. So that approach is a numbers game. It can work though. One strategy that I like to get backlinks is to leverage other people's audiences. And it's kind of similar to outreach, but what we do is we might do a content piece on whatever the topic is for the client. And then we use similar tools, and we'll go find people and we'll say, hey, we don't want you to feature our thing. We want to feature your expertise. And so we get them to contribute an opinion on a topic that's
Okay.
keyword specific.
Okay.
And then it's basically like a crowdsourced article. We post it. We say, hey, look, you're famous. You're on Daniel's blog. Go share it on social media. We're going to do the same thing too. And then you give them all the tools and assets
Yeah.
to share the content that's on your website to
Yeah.
hopefully get a link.
Okay. Wow. Okay. So with the last strategy, that would actually be then kind of featuring their article, something on your page, but then they are linking back to your, because it is featured on your site. So they would link back to your page, right? And that would then raise like your page in credibility or in ranking because they are linking to your website, correct?
Yeah, with one adjustment. So yes on everything above, except for it's not necessarily their full length article.
Mhm.
It's their short contribution on a greater topic that features other
Okay.
people that contribute as well.
Okay, gotcha. So it could be just like a quote, a statement, or something like that.
Yeah, usually it's like, 1 to 3 paragraph kind of thing.
Okay.
It's something more than a sentence, but not a full article.
Okay. Okay. Very good. So if somebody went through those stages, they created their content. They actually, you started out with speed optimization, but then we created content. Then we found other ways to link to our content. What would there be like another step or something that in the process that you think that would be good to take, or is it pretty much doing that rinse and repeat, or would there be a next step to focus on?
It's largely rinse and repeat, but you can diversify it. So just like with the content, you can diversify into images and graphics and different types of media, or you can do podcasts and transcribe the text. And then
Yeah.
there's a million different ways to engage in the external credibility to get backlinks. So the general concepts are all the same. There's just different avenues to pursue them.
Okay, sweet. Very, very good. So I think that definitely kind of helps understand like the complexity of SEO, but kind of boils it down to the core pieces of what is important, and what to focus on and what not to focus on, like
Yeah.
not to go on Fiverr and buy backlinks for $5. So I think that will definitely be helpful for all the viewers to know what to focus on, or what really is important to increase just to increase the ranking. When somebody starts with this process, as you already mentioned in the beginning, it takes time. And I know somebody would write an article, maybe get a backlink, and the next day they go on Google and like, I'm still on 912, whatever. So
Mm-hmm.
kind of what is the typical time frame, like kind of where you see like, okay, what is like the typical like, process and improvement process that somebody can expect? Because I think that's important to know what to expect, not to get frustrated. So maybe
Yeah.
kind of also tell us what someone should expect when they start maybe applying these steps?
I explain it by saying a quarter for quarter. So what I mean by that is a quarter of your keywords per every calendar quarter, every 3-month period. So for easy number, let's say, for easy math, let's say you're targeting 10 keyword phrases. So after the first 3 months, well, actually, even before you start, I like to run what's called like a pre-SEO report. So you know exactly where you stand. There's a million different rank tracking websites and tools that are out there. But what you want to do is once you've done your research and identify what words you're going to go after and try to monetize, then you want to see where you stand so you can measure that progress, because you can't measure traffic and conversions and sales until you hit page 1. So you need something to measure that progress. So you usually measure the progression of rankings. So when you run a
Right.
report, you'll say, okay, day 1's today, and all my keywords, I got 1 on page 9 and the rest are on past page 10. I can't even find them, because most rank tracking software will go back 100 results. There's 10 results per page, so it'll go back
Okay.
10 pages. So day 1, we got 1 out of 10 keywords, and it's way back on page 9. So a quarter later, 3 months later, that one that's on page 9 went to page 6, and then like 2 more pop up on page 8 and 9. So we've had 3 move, 1 quarter of our 10 move in 1 quarter. And then about a quarter later, another 3 months later, that one that went from 5 or 6 is now on page 2 or 3, and then the others continue up. So it's every quarter you usually see some sort of progression. So you can definitely see the progress of your efforts, but until they'll start getting on page 1, since nobody goes past page 1, you can't measure keywords or you can't measure traffic because there is no traffic, and therefore you can't measure conversions and sales. So usually you start by by tracking rankings.
Right. Okay. Yeah, that totally makes sense. And I think that was also helpful to kind of not look at it on a daily, but definitely on a much larger time frame. Yeah, and
Well,
do
and
quarterly.
you mentioning daily is a good topic, because a lot of times, like with new clients, we really set expectations, and,
Right.
and we explain that same thing. But what we also do is we say, hey, we're going to send you updates. We'll track rankings daily or weekly, but we're not going to show them internally. We'll look at that,
Mm-hmm.
but we'll share the results with you monthly, because what's important for the listeners is they don't want to make knee-jerk reactions, because Google's always making algorithm updates, and a lot of times they're doing what's called sandboxing and testing. And so if you see a drop of a couple results or a couple pages, you might freak out, make some wild assumptions that it was related to something you did 3 weeks ago, and
Yeah.
in fact had nothing to do with it. And so you
Mm-hmm.
like undo everything.
Mm-hmm.
And if you would have left it one more day, it would have just been fine and reverted back. So it's really important to focus more on the broader view to see the trend lines instead of a daily or even weekly. Look at more like monthly or quarterly.
Yes. Okay. Okay. Very good. So now maybe one last question on the framework, on the step by step. Do you have like content, like going back to the content strategy, like how many pieces of content is it about, the amount that is out, like let's put out 10 right now, or is it more about like putting out, I don't know, 1 per week? Is there a best practice way on how to be publishing that content, and as in the volume? I know you said quality, but
Mm-hmm.
if we do create quality content, is it more about being consistent, or just blasting out 10 right away and just have that work its magic?
There's some value in consistency for sure. I mean, if you're only going to write once every other month, then that's not going to get very far unless you have just an absolutely amazing piece of content.
Yeah.
But I can kind of answer this by explaining how we've evolved over the years. So we used to do a weekly piece of content, and it was more aimed towards a base word count. So we'd be around 500 to 800, just so we could kind of mass produce content. We'd still go through the quality control process of identifying good topics, but we wouldn't put as much time into it as we would to make it unique.
Mm-hmm.
And so what we started A/B testing against was, okay, if we do 1 piece of content a week versus 2 a month that are longer form and more unique, what performs better? And just across the board, the longer, more unique ones perform better. So what we do is we average 2 per month. But when we talked about at the beginning of a campaign, we launch into content and competitive research. So what we do is we still map out a 52-week content calendar. So we still map out 4 to 5 topics per month, but we only write 2. So the reason why we do that is because then we can bring this content calendar back to the client and say, hey, here's these tentative topics for the whole year. Yay, I don't have to bug you and wait on you. You don't have to be annoyed with me hitting you up every week. And then we have them sign off on that. Now, the reason why we research so many topics but only write 2 is because that gives us a lot of padding, because then the client can come back and say, these all look great except for these 5, scratch these 5. And then we still have tons of resources left. Then as our copywriters go to actually write the content, they have to go through a process of doing research and educating themselves on the topic so they can write accordingly. If they can't find enough resources to educate themselves on to confidently write a piece, then they internally can scratch that topic and still have a lot of resources left as well.
Got it. Okay. Very good. Okay. Very, very helpful. Cool. So now we went through like all the things to do, like the step by step. And you already did mention like a few things not to do, like go on Fiverr and do crappy backlinks. But is there anything else you would recommend to avoid or not to do going through that process when starting out optimizing SEO? Is there something else that comes to your mind that somebody could do wrong? Probably a lot of things, but maybe like your top 1 or 2 other things that somebody should be careful for not to do.
Two things come to mind. One is don't overcomplicate the design. Obviously you want a decent looking design, but I've seen the most simplistic looking designs consistently outperform the most visually stunning designs, because what can happen is you have visual stimulation overload, or there's confusion in the call to action because there's all these pretty pictures everywhere. So a lot of times simpler is better. And then maybe one other answer is, if you're shopping around SEO, one of the things to avoid is anybody that says proprietary. Like if they say they have a proprietary approach, proprietary link building strategy, proprietary software, it's very rare that they truly have some sort of proprietary approach. So the bigger problem is that they're hiding what they're doing, either because they don't know what they're doing and it's a sales guy, or they're just pitching you and they want to get the sale and they know it's like an outdated old process. So most SEOs, we all use the same few dozen tools. It's just in what combination and how effectively.
Yeah.
So the chance of anybody actually having anything proprietary worth hiding is highly unlikely. So just run if you hear proprietary.
Okay, very good. I think one question that actually just came to me, because I know a lot of the visitors are also like into creating like funnels, sales funnels, and funnels where you maybe run ads to, etc., but then are forgetting like a core website to run SEO. Maybe you can kind of address how you with your clients, or just what you like to do to solve that problem when somebody is maybe creating a funnel in whatever software, if it's ClickFunnels or whatever, but that is of course not SEO optimized at all usually. But how do you usually advise clients to use SEO if maybe they only had like 1 or 2 funnels up to now and nothing that is SEO optimized?